Welcome everyone to the Digital Shield Protection for Your Life online webinar. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Today's presentation is being recorded and the recording will be emailed within 2 business days. As you have questions, you may post them in the Zoom Q&A and we will answer questions at the end of today's call. We'll try our best to answer all of your questions, but if for whatever reason we are unable to get to your question today, please email learning@nfp.com. At this time, I'd like to introduce our speaker for today's webinar. Joining us today is Mila Arrojo, Personal Lines Manager at NFP. We are very excited to have her speaking with us today, and it is my great pleasure to hand the call over to our speaker. Mila, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Leanne. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for attending today's webinar today. We're very excited to go over the coverages of the DigitalShield new insurance product. Before I begin, I'd like to give you a little background on myself. I've been in the business for over 20 years, working directly with our clients and insurers and offering products to protect emerging risks and personal insurance needs. And I also have a broad experience in various coverages available across North America. And one of the things that I've been passionate about is helping people get the most out of their insurance coverages. A topic that's always been really important to me is this need for personal cyber and the risks that we're all facing as individuals. From a broker perspective, we're here as brokers to protect and provide our clients with coverages that can be there to respond when things go wrong. And the lack of availability of this product until now was definitely concerning. So all of these experiences, along with the interactions I've had with clients like you over the years, makes it really exciting to be able to present this new and affordable and accessible coverage. I feel that this is a long needed solution to address and protect you from cyber risks, whether you're an individual, if it's for your smart device or smart device enabled homes, and also for members of your family. I'd also like to take the opportunity to mention that we have James Fritz, VP of Cybersecurity for NFP, joining us today for our conversation. James keeps his eye out on emerging cyber risks for us at NFP and is always full of great tips and suggestions to help keep us safe. So I'm really glad to have him join. Throughout the presentation, he'll be sharing his knowledge with us and also available for our Q&A, which will follow. So today we're going to be covering everything you need to know about DigitalShield, but also about personal cyber because this is such a new product. So we're going to cover who can benefit from the product, why this is such an important coverage for individuals today, some facts and statistics, some examples, and then we'll go over the coverages, the value-added services that the policy offers you, as well as what the policy conditions are, and of course the cost and how to get it. So before we get into examples of cyber risks and how the DigitalShield coverage and coverages and services can protect you, you may be wondering what this coverage is about or how cyber insurance fits into your life. This is a product that responds to people of all ages and lifestyles because it's about protecting your personal activity online, whether it relates to banking, your social accounts, your personal identity, or your assets. There are aspects of this coverage that can appeal to everyone. We developed this product because we saw an increasing need among our clients who had concerns about their online safety or would call us to find out if their home insurance had protection against phishing scams or other thefts or emerging risks. Cyberbullying in schools has also been on the rise, and the concerns for the safety of our children and our clients' children inspired action for us to find something that could respond to all these digital needs in one package. No one was offering this to the general public, so we went to work to build this for you, and the result is DigitalShield. As I mentioned before, this is such a new coverage on the marketplace that our knowledge as consumers is limited. And, basically we hear about these kinds of situations in the media, but I don't think it's well known that there is now a coverage that could help you. So to better understand your risks, and if you're wondering if this would apply to you, here's some questions that you could ask yourself to help you determine if you have exposures or if this is something that you need. And our goal throughout this presentation will be to help you understand the coverage, but also what's really happening in the landscape today and why this is so concerning and such an important thing to consider. So for example, if you have a smart home or a smart device at home, This could include something as small as a smart TV, voice assistants. Some people have their entire homes connected, their lights, the garage doors, anything connected to Wi-Fi in your home could qualify. If you have tablets or cell phones, and I think today most people do have those, or of course a computer or laptop. If you use your cell phone or if you use devices when you're traveling or when you're out of the house, and this could be if you're using location services or you're even using Google Maps to get around, it's almost impossible to find situations these days where people aren't connected in some way or another. So this covers almost anyone who's connected. And let's not forget, especially since this pandemic, online shopping and online banking. I mean, this has been something that's been so valuable to us, you know, just to get by day to day in some of these periods during the pandemic. So now that we've gone over this, let's go ahead and look at some statistics. Is this really something that you should be concerned about? How many people is this really affecting? So this is a really interesting statistic. This comes from a study done in 2020. 57% of Canadians said they have been a victim of cybercrime. And I found that number to be quite high, but after speaking to people about this product over the past couple of months, you'd be surprised almost everyone that I've spoken to or who's had questions knows someone or has themselves been a victim or avoided being a victim, not only just once, but maybe several times. 80% of people are somewhat or very concerned about a cyber breach. Yet only 9% of people have cyber insurance. And again, this could speak to the fact that it's until now only been really available to a very limited population through add-ons to different policies that exist. We're hoping by the end of this presentation, we can see that number rise a little bit as you realize how accessible this product is and how useful it can be. Moving to another really interesting stat, consumer cybercrime losses are nearly double those of property crime losses, to the tune of about $30 million. This is quite significant because, especially speaking from the point of view of the insurance business, speaking to people and hearing about stories on a daily basis, if you have a home, you want to make sure that it's insured. It's very rare that people decide to self-insure their property. People are concerned about what's in their home, that they're going to be robbed, is something covered by their home insurance if something is stolen. If consumer cybercrime losses are nearly double that of property crime, and as a population, we've all been educated and know we have accessible coverages for property like our homes or our apartments or our condos, it only makes sense that as soon as a good policy is available and accessible, it's definitely worth considering, especially since the statistical losses are very high. So in addition to that, I'd like to share some stats with you from some recent studies. Some of these are coming from the Government of Canada. The government provides a lot of information on various risks on the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity website. And it comes with a lot of up-to-date information, and it's quite surprising to see the prevalence of all of the new scams that are coming up all the time. So I invite you to familiarize yourself with that site if you haven't already. Some information that we have is from our partners at CyberScout, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Over 1 million consumers are victims of ransomware every month. I think that statistic is quite surprising. From the government, over 25 million Canadians' information was compromised in 2019 through just 3 cyber breaches alone. So there are far more than 3 cyber breaches with corporations a year, but just in 2019, with 3 of them, 25 million Canadians' information was compromised. And then turning the conversation a little bit more towards connected homes, for those of you who have connected homes. And what we mean by this, again, is you have Wi-Fi enabled devices in your home that are connected to your router, such as voice assistants or smart TVs, et cetera. Routers and connected cameras represented 90% of the Internet of Things attacks as of the latest data in 2019. So we are surrounded by risks everywhere. And I think that this is one of the things about this type of crime that even makes it more concerning is that unlike other types of crime that may be influenced by where you live, your neighborhood, or even your country, cybercrime is a crime without borders. And what this means is that, the criminals could be situated anywhere. There are large organizations and very sophisticated players, cyber criminals, social engineers involved in all kinds of schemes worldwide. And your location does not protect you because they can reach anywhere through the internet. 1.3 billion social media users have had their accounts hacked or data compromised worldwide. And I know that this is a fairly common occurrence as well, as I have often heard stories from our clients. So we know statistically, since the pandemic began, with people running multiple screens and connected devices at home, and at a time also where all of these heightened concerns that we've had for our safety or for, accessing various COVID relief funds have increased. Crime levels have also increased dramatically. So these are some of the stats I've shared with you, but I'd like to invite James, our cybersecurity VP, to chime in here and maybe share some of his thoughts on what he's seeing.
Thanks, Mila. Yeah, it's very interesting with cybercrime. Mila touched on it, how it doesn't matter where you are. An actor from anywhere in the world can get to you if you're connected to the internet. And one of the major things we've seen over time is a shift of trends, but we never saw a shift of trends quite as quickly as we did back in March of 2020, last year when COVID first came around. And everything was COVID, whether it was click here to get information about the virus, click here to get information about how mRNA is going to help develop the vaccine quicker, click here, just everything was completely turned around. And the beauty of technology is also the curse of technology. The quicker new technology and new security comes out, it's also the quicker new compromises come out. So it's always something to be aware of is, we see 1.3 billion social media users having their information out there today, but that number is not going to slow down. Every day, there's going to be more social media users putting more information out there, and there's going to be more compromises every single day. So it's a game where you just have to constantly stay vigilant and try to protect yourself as best as possible, because ultimately everybody's a target.
Thank you so much, James. Yeah, for sure. It's crazy how many new scams and new approaches people are coming up with on a regular basis. Unbelievable. I'd like to just share a couple of more stats here with you, which speak more towards the risks that we have in our own lives. So as of latest data, 53% of people are using smart home devices in their primary residence. And what's really interesting is when we go into the statistics, these numbers started to climb quite a bit in the latter part of last year as more and more people were at home due to COVID. Also, 71% of Canadians use online banking. So this is direct access to funds online. So that's a huge percentage of the population. And I'm sure that number has probably climbed since this last statistic. And finally, something that I think is also noteworthy is that 63% of network intrusions are a result of a compromised user password or compromised user passwords. And there are a lot of interesting, cases with this where people are using the same password over and over again. One thing gets hacked, everything gets hacked. But I think this is a great time maybe to turn this back over to James, if you don't mind, and help us out and maybe give us some of your thoughts on this and your tips to help us protect ourselves online.
Sure. So first and foremost, one of the main things to protect yourself is going to be multi-factor authentication. We see it in various forms right now, whether you have an email account or a banking account set up, and you have various options. Like I said, you can have them text you a password or a 6-digit code. You can have them email you a code, or you can even have an authentication application directly on your cell phone. And then there's even a more secure method, which is a physical device. YubiKey is kind of one of the main ones. But the application on your phone tends to be the most secure, because if somebody was to gain access to my Gmail, everything is tied to my Gmail. So if I don't have MFA in place, or if I have MFA, multi-factor authentication, sending back to my Gmail, and somebody's already compromised my email, well, they're going to move forward and they're going to compromise my bank account. They're going to compromise my social media accounts. So having MFA in place is great, but having a high level of security with the MFA that you choose is even better. So if you're going to use MFA, I always recommend an application on your phone, and there's a few different ones that are available, or a physical device, which tends to sometimes be overkill, but it does help. The second is password managers. There are a lot of great password managers out there that can assist with creating extremely complex passwords. And they not only do that, but they can tell you if the password that you're using has been breached before, and if you're using it on another account. Mila had mentioned that, once an account gets compromised or you're reusing a password, if my email password is the same and my login password is the same for my bank account that is for email, well, as soon as they're in my email, they're in my banking. So reuse of passwords is dangerous. So that's where password managers come into play, is they allow you to easily store securely a bunch of complex passwords. And so that way, if a company you use ever sends you a letter or an email, unfortunately, and they say, hey, we suffered a breach, we believe your credentials were compromised, you just go into your password manager and you say, okay, this password only exists for company X. I'm just going to change it for company X, and I feel good about the rest of my accounts. The third is the Internet of Things homes. It's the connected homes. I personally have garage doors. I have doorbells. I have phones. I have TVs. I have a lot of things connected to the internet. And whatever the weakest security is amongst those, that is going to be how they get into your home network. And once somebody's on your home network, it's a lot easier for them to propagate to the rest of your devices. They don't want to be on your garage door opener, but if they're on your garage door and they can get to your cell phone or they can get to your laptop, that's amazing. So making sure that your devices that you use that are connected to your Wi-Fi are always up to date is extremely important. If they have a default automatically download updates and install, that's what you always want to check every time. If not, maybe every 6 months when you change out the air filters on your air conditioning, just go ahead and make sure all your IoT devices are actually up to date as well. The fourth thing is the amount of data that is available on people nowadays is just tremendous. And it's not just what we give in confidence that is actually taken. So if I sign up with an account and they have my social and they have my birth date and they have my address, and then that gets compromised, then that's gone. But it's what I willingly give up and I make publicly available. One of the things I see every day is there'll be a quiz on a social media platform, and it'll say, your superhero name is the street you grew up on and your first pet's name. Well, the street you grew up on and your first pet's name tend to be backup questions that you can answer if you ever forget your password on your banking or your email. So avoid things that gives away who you are or who your identity is as a person, because all of that gets combined, aggregated over time, and it makes you an easier target. And then the last is backing up your data. Cybersecurity over time has moved to this idea of not if you get compromised, but when you get compromised. And the idea that you lose potentially everything with the compromise it's extremely scary. You could lose wedding photos, the birth of your first, second, third, fourth kid, whatever it is, your tax returns, everything could be gone in the blink of an eye. And this just isn't with a compromise. If it's all stored on one computer and that computer just happens to short out on you one day, it's all gone. So make sure that you use some sort of mechanism to back up your data, preferably to multiple sources, whether that's a hard drive off to the side or it's a cloud offering that backs up your data. And really those 5 things are kind of, you take care of those and you're going to be in a lot safer spot. But like I said, the mantra is not if you get compromised, it's when you get compromised and how you're able to respond.
Thank you so much, James. Yeah, that definitely gives us a lot to think about. And I mean, just in some of the things that you said there, I know, all of these fun quizzes that we complete on social sites, like they seem fun. And although I don't do all of them, I must admit over the years, I've probably done 1 or 2 to find out what my superhero name was or something like that. And it's honestly not anything I ever thought of until you mentioned it, to be kind of potentially compromising. There are so many aspects to this, and I think it's one of the reasons that we included some of the coverages that we've included in this product, to help kind of counsel people one-on-one with some of the value-added services. But before we get to that, I think I'm going to get to one of the questions that I think are would be on the top of everyone's mind. And very often people come to this kind of question at the end of a presentation, but because we want to be really transparent and we don't want people wondering, yeah, this sounds great, but how much is it going to cost? I'm going to jump right to the bottom line here before we go any further with our examples and the exact details of the coverage. So I'm jumping right into the pricing. The pricing is very straightforward. There's nothing complicated about it at all. You choose a limit of insurance that you want, and then we have annual rates for each one. So for example, if you'd like $100,000 of coverage, the annual rate is $200 per year. That covers yourself. It covers the members of your household that permanently live with you, which normally would probably be family members. So you don't need to buy one policy for each person. One policy will cover all of you in your household. And it also covers multiple locations that you own. So you don't need to buy one of these policies per house. If you have several connected homes, that's okay. It's going to be covered under your one policy. And I had noticed that a question came in on how much coverage do you need? That's a really personal and difficult question to answer. If you're not sure how much coverage you need, you could always start with a base amount. But in any time that you want to figure out how much coverage you need, you want to think about how much you think you have to lose. So if you're someone who could potentially lose $1 million if someone takes your identity or commits fraud or gains access to your online accounts, then you may want to go with that higher end limit. But if you're just starting out, or you're not really sure, or you just want to have some kind of protection and you just want to have access to the consulting services and the ability to speak to cyber experts when you have questions, then you could go with one of the other limits. I wish I had a formula for you. We've been trying to develop one, but at this point, I just wanted to also share with you guys, in choosing your coverage limit, it's really a personal choice, and it involves kind of knowing what your own personal risks are. So now that we've got that out of the way, I'd like to go into some examples of how this coverage can help. So oftentimes people say, okay, well, this sounds great, but what are some examples of how I can use this or when this is going to be useful to me? A really common thing that's been happening a lot are people getting text messages or different phishing scams where they're tricked into clicking on a text or a link in an email. You think it's a message from a trusted source, like maybe your bank, but it's really a scam. And what happens in these cases is you end up keying in your information and they've got it. So if something like that happens, DigitalShield can help determine what may be at risk. They can do some analysis and they can take it from there and give you some counsel. If your smart home system is acting strange, and I know this happened to me recently, I had my smart garage door installed. I bought some sort of Wi-Fi extender, plugged it in. Things weren't working that well. I actually ended up speaking to CyberScout, who we'll speak about shortly, and they were able to help me kind of identify some potential problems, and I wasn't hacked. So I was really happy to hear that, but I really had no way of knowing at the time. So if something's going on with your smart home system and you just want to get some advice, they can help. And if you do end up being hacked, obviously that's what the coverage is for those situations as well. If your computer gets hacked and you're being asked for ransom to regain access, sometimes you may get an email telling you that if you don't pay a ransom, everything is going to be shut down. And other times you may actually get blocked and ransomware may be active on your system. Anytime a situation like that occurs, DigitalShield can help. They can help analyze with you and take a look at what's going on. And if you do have to make a claim or you do have to pay a ransom, there is coverage in the policy for that. Another example, and I think this touches many of us, is the fact that we're all sharing so many multiple screens at home, working from home, especially during this pandemic. Very often, you might give your child one of your devices just to keep them entertained while you're working, or they might be doing something online for their school and receive some sort of an email and they're tricked into clicking on something or even playing some sort of online game. So if there's a situation like that that comes up, we can cover you for that type of thing too. And speaking of children, one of the main features and a motivating factor for us was looking at finding coverages for our clients for cyberbullying and cyber stalking. Obviously, anyone who has kids may be very concerned about this. Here are some stats which I found quite alarming, but it represents a lot of what's happening now. 37% of young people have been victims of cyberbullying. 59% have been harassed online, and over 25% of these have been bullied repeatedly. And on your screen, you'll see here some research from the Pew Research Center. And I've included it because it kind of breaks down that statistic of the 59%. And it goes over also at the same time what some of these cyberbullying things may be. So offensive name calling, that's cyberbullying. Spreading of false rumors, receiving explicit images that you didn't ask for, constantly asking where you are, what you're doing, unless of course it's a parent. Parents don't get categorized the same way. If you receive physical threats, or if you have explicit images of yourself shared without your consent. And of course, this can apply for teens, but it can also apply for adults in some situations. So the policy covers cyberbullying, and these are some examples that I wanted to share with you of what that could be. Also notably is that more than half of the youth who are cyberbullied don't tell their parents when it's occurring. And I think that one of the really valuable parts of this coverage that I really like, and it's one of the things that I think are equally as important as the insurance coverage, is the access to cyber experts to help guide you through situations that you're not familiar with. And one of these could be if you're involved in a cyber incident, you don't know how to stop it. If you're receiving things anonymously and you're being harassed, you can call and get some guidance. And just knowing that you have access to this could open the conversation for you and your family when you purchase this insurance protection, and just let them know, you know what, we just purchased this DigitalShield product, and one of the things that it does is it protects us from being harassed online. So at least it's a resource available to you and your family. And sometimes just knowing that there's something there can empower, a youth or yourself to just get some help if something like this is happening, which we find is really important. So going on to some additional examples. As we had just mentioned, if someone is spreading rumors about you online and you don't know how to stop them, if you find out that someone is using your email to send malicious links to all your contacts, and this happens quite frequently actually, and we've had it happen to us where our own clients have gotten hacked and sent us emails, and we've contacted them to let them know, like, did you send this? Should we open this link? And sure enough, they've been hacked. And it's a pretty scary situation to be in, because it not only compromises, your personal contacts, but it can compromise your professional contacts. And, the scam can involve any number of different things. So it's really great to have a product that can help support and help you figure out what to do when something like this is happening, and what the actual impact is, if there's any impact to yourself, or if it's something that's spreading through your email to other people. And then finally, something very common as well, you discover that someone has hacked your social media account and is pretending they're you, or they've taken your identity to create a fake account. So they've stolen your identity and then they're acting as you in a separate account that has nothing to do with yours. These situations are so frustrating and alarming because people have, it's your personal reputation. It might be your kid's reputation. It can be very disturbing and it can be very harmful. So there are coverages that can help with DigitalShield. So there's some other interesting things going on besides what we've covered. It's unbelievable how many different types of risks and how many different kinds of scams are going on today. I'll take a moment here just to share a personal story that happened to me most recently, where I was in the garden and I had my phone with me and I was just relaxing. And all of a sudden, I got a phone call from my partner, and I knew he was in the house. So I was a bit concerned why he would be calling me and not just come outside. So I answered the phone and I heard nothing on the other end of the line. And that concerned me even more because I thought, oh no, something's happened to him. He's not able to speak. He called me. Of course, I run into the house. I go find him, and I find him sitting at his computer just hanging out. And I'm like, why did you call me? And he's like, I didn't call you. So I was like, yeah, you did. Like, here's my phone. And as that happened, he called me again, but I could see him and I could see his phone, and he was not the person calling me. It was really scary. So at that point in time, I thought, well, first things first, I'm going to call my service provider. As I was calling them, I looked at my phone and it was me calling myself. But it wasn't, obviously. It was this situation happening. When I finally got through to my service provider, I told them what was happening. I said, I don't know what's going on. Maybe it's SIM swapping. I really have no idea. And they said, oh, it sounds like it might be ID spoofing. And I said, well, what do I do about it? Like, what does this mean? Am I hacked? What? And they said, well, from our end, there's not much we can do. If you want, we can change your phone number. So, I mean, luckily I'm happily have my own DigitalShield product, and I was able to get help that way. But I thought that this was just a great story that's happening to people every day. And I wondered if maybe, James, you could share with us a little bit about SIM swapping dangers and what is this ID spoofing and some of these things that are going on.
Sure. So ID spoofing is probably everybody on this webinar right now has received some sort of ID spoofed phone call. And the beauty and the crux of sending a phone mess or a phone call or starting a phone call is if you have the right technology, you tell the receiving phone who you are. So instead of, back in the day when caller ID first came out and you just presented yourself as whatever it was, and then the person on the other end said, oh, that's James calling me. Now with technology, you can pretend to be anybody. So I receive a lot of phone calls that pretend to be from my area code plus the first three. So it looks familiar because a lot of times when you set up your cell phone accounts, you tend to set it up in buckets or tranches. So your family tends to have a lot of the same first 6 digits of their cell phone. So it kind of establishes trust. And so that's why a lot of companies or a lot of bad actors do ID spoofing. And so when somebody's calling from an unknown number, it looks somewhat familiar. So I'm more tempted to answer it. As soon as I answer it, then they know that I'm interested, and then they can go about whether they want to, just hang up on me and just mark it down as, yep, he did answer, or maybe they're going to try and, convince me my computer's compromised, whatever they're trying to do that day. SIM swapping is a lot more dangerous, and it feeds on this idea of social engineering. If I, as a bad actor, can call your cell phone provider and I can say, hey, I'm actually Mila. I just have a cold today, so my voice is a little deeper. And I don't remember my password, but this is where I live. My husband's name is this, and I've gathered enough information on Mila because I know her superhero name, so I know the street she grew up on, and I know her pet's first name. Then they're going to say, okay, Mila, well, I hope you feel better. I hope the cold subsides. We're going to go ahead and swap your SIM from your IMEI, your phone identifier that you currently have, and we'll go ahead and switch it to your new phone. You say, thanks. You have a great day. So now I, as the bad actor, can not only send calls that are not only looking like they're Mila, they're 100% coming from Mila's phone number. I can now receive calls from Mila. So if Mila has any sort of MFA set up to send text messages, I'm now in her email, I'm on her cell phone number, and I say, hey, I know her username and password, and it's going to email me her MFA. I now have her MFA token. So now I can log in. So SIM swapping is a lot more dangerous. So with your cell phone providers, make sure you have additional coverage, make sure you have additional protection. Usually they'll require a password, and then you can do a PIN or something else. And without that PIN, they're not going to ever help you. Now, they can still be social engineered because people are people at the end of the day. So SIM swapping is extremely dangerous. And if somebody is able to ever get a hold of your phone SIM and replace theirs with yours, then you need to make sure that gets shut down immediately. But a lot of times it's too late by the time you realize it.
Right. Oh, thank you so much, James. Yeah, it's definitely this whole SIM swapping is definitely very scary. And just as a tip, if anyone wants to look any information up on it, the service providers usually provide some information. For example, Bell or Rogers, you can do a search on their website, and they'll talk about SIM swapping and what you can do to protect yourself with them. But again, if that does end up happening, the person ends up picking up any old phone, using your SIM card, and then they can use multi-factor authentication to pretend they're you, and then they've got the keys to everything. So definitely something to be aware of. Okay, so we'll move on to some additional facts on cybercrime. And we're heading more towards some of the things that are not within our control. So hopefully we can control if our service providers are putting the right securities in measure, and we have all the right passwords before someone can take our SIM, or we're using good password best practices to protect our online accounts. But there's another problem that we become a victim to, and that's if a third party, like a company that we do business with, gets hacked. And there's just nothing we can do about that. And so here what I'm sharing is 10 of the largest data breaches impacting Canadians since 2011. By the number of records impacted. And we had talked a little bit at the beginning of the presentation and one of the stats about Life Labs and Capital One and Desjardins. Here you can kind of see an image of the millions of Canadians who have had their personal information stolen through data breaches of these companies. And the personal information that can be obtained from these types of breaches include names, birth dates, social insurance numbers, contact information, banking details. When Capital One was hacked in March 2019, information of 6 million Canadian customers was stolen, and this included credit scores, transaction data, as well as bank account numbers. So these little pieces of information that are obtained through these cyber breaches are not within our control. And unfortunately, once the information is obtained, there's not really much you can do to predict what people are going to do about it. All you can do from that point is get some good advice and stay vigilant, and hopefully have a good insurance product that will be able to compensate you for any losses. So individual Canadians lost over 43 million to cybercrime fraud in 2019. And let's just remember our statistics that since COVID, since the onset of COVID, these numbers have increased dramatically. The FBI has seen a 400% increase in reports of cyber attacks since the outset of COVID-19. And this number is a little bit outdated because it was as of the latest reports that we had. So, as time goes on, the risks increase and the different attacks become more sophisticated. I've also included a couple of screenshots here of some stories that appeared in the past couple of months. We've seen numerous stories in the media about people who have been hacked, either having their social accounts hacked, or in this case, in that Calgary Herald, this gentleman ended up being on the hook for COVID relief payments, and he only found out about it when he saw his T4s, and he had a T4 for something that he had never claimed. As it turns out, the government of Canada was also hacked, and I believe it was several thousand Canadians' information was compromised. It was well covered in the media. And although the government will try and help people in cases like this, they can't guarantee what's going to happen with that information. And this person still got their T4. So in a situation like this, when you are compromised, it does help to have some people on your side to represent you and help figure out what you can do on your side, and not just be at the mercy of third parties and going through a lot of bureaucracy to get your situation resolved. Finally, some supporting information from the Globe and Mail that bank hacks, online merchandise fraud, and phishing attempts have skyrocketed during COVID-19. And some of the top scams that have been going on are phishing scams, ransomware, and non-delivery mail frauds. So there's something to be said for what's happened with online shopping and our safety there. So overall, I guess the takeaway that I really wanted to share with you guys from that last slide is that even if all your systems are secure, even if you only have one computer at home and you don't have a connected home and you don't use your mobile phone on Wi-Fi and all kinds of different things that you can do to try and protect yourself. Even if all your systems are secure, any account you have with a corporation that has your personal information, and as I mentioned, the government of Canada has even been hacked. Any information that's out there is at risk if the corporation gets hacked. So I think we've gone through a lot of examples at this point. So I'd like to really go over the coverages with you that DigitalShield can offer. It protects you and members of your household that live permanently at home with you for personally owned online accounts and networks, connected homes, wearables, mobile and connected devices. Obviously, that's going to include your laptops, your computers, smartwatches, cell phones, tablets, and any of those devices that are connected to Wi-Fi in your home, as well as your router, and also online accounts. Some of the risks that the policy covers specifically are smart home devices and wearables, extortion and ransomware, breach of privacy, identity theft, reputation damage, cyberbullying, cyberstalking, theft of money from accounts and investments, data loss and digital assets. And this can include your photos and videos, et cetera. But do remember, you do need to have a backup for us to be able to properly restore all of these for you if a device has been compromised. And then throughout the presentation, I've made mention of some of the additional things that are also covered, what I'd like to think of the value adds of the policy. The policy also provides compensation for additional professional help where warranted. And this is quite unique and can be quite helpful. So for example, if you need legal support, if you need some information or you need some legal assistance, there is coverage for that in the policy wording. If you need some psychological support, counseling, if your children have been victims of cyberbullying, or even yourself and you're having a hard time dealing with that, there is some coverage in the policy for psychological assistance. Relocation services. So depending on the nature of the situation and how serious it is, you might have to take your kids out of school for a while. You might have to change schools, or you might have to, move to a secure location if you're having problems at work temporarily. So if you need to secure your personal safety for some reason, there are some relocation costs covered in the policy. And then, of course, if your reputation is damaged and there are consequences of that, or you'd like to get help in trying to manage a situation, crisis management or public relations assistance are also provided for within the wording of the policy. The bottom line is the policy is set up to help you recover and gain back your reputation, your sense of safety, and your peace of mind after an incident. And I wanted to ask James at this point if there was anything that he might chime in with, anything you've seen happen with cybercrime and some of the resulting results of someone's information getting hacked in different circumstances, damaging their reputation or maybe even costing them a job.
Yeah, so cybercrime is really interesting. When we think of a normal criminal, we think of one person who's, driving the car, breaking into the house, stealing everything, loading it into the car, and then driving the car away. But cybercrime doesn't really work that way. There's key individuals who focus on various aspects. Some are really good at gathering all your data and aggregating it. Some are really good at breaking down the door. Some are really good at figuring out what it needs to be stolen. And all of that is sold to each other on the dark web. And so we had an incident where there was a female I knew, and she was part of the National Guard here in the US, and she went to do her time, which is a weekend a month. And when she came back, everything was, she was in a much worse place. So everything that was basically connected to her accounts, everything was just gone. So she spent a lot of time working with her bank, spent a lot of time working with her cell phone provider, and really when you come back to it, if you come back to a house and the window's broken and stuff's gone, they broke the window and they got in. But a lot of times with cybercrime, you don't know how they got in. And so she spent a lot of time, was this the issue? And so she had to go through and basically change every single thing that she had access to and make sure that she was secure. And it's painstakingly difficult to figure out everything that's out there on you. You may have set up an account with some random thing way back in the day, and that could be what's actually leading to the compromise, and you have no idea anymore. So it's extremely tedious. It's extremely just taxing on the person anytime you have to deal with any sort of cyber incident, because very rarely do you see something happening and the criminal leaves like, hey, thanks for leaving the password to your email so easily guessable. I was able to hack everything. It's never that easy. And so you spend a lot of time questioning everything, and it takes an incredible amount of time just to get back to the status quo. And it's not an easy thing to do.
That's a great example. And it's so true, because anytime something like this happens, because we don't have a lot of resources as individuals to figure out these things or even know what to check. And I think that it is extremely taxing, and it really puts a burden on you, because you never know if you're really okay. And if you don't have someone to ask or help you, it can definitely be very alarming, because you will have no way to know what's going on. So, a lot of these additional value adds of the policy, we hope to provide that kind of support and that kind of extra information that you need to just feel a little peace of mind, or at least know that you've done everything that you need to do, or thought of all the different aspects that you need to look at, and have someone help you with that. So before we go into, the value, some additional value added services in our partnership with CyberScout, I do want to go into a couple of questions that people often have about the small print. So what's the catch? So we've already told you that the price of the policy starts at $200 a year for the entire year, for all the members of your family who live with you, for all your homes. And so people often say, well, what's the catch? So essentially, we've tried to be really transparent. We've tried to make this policy really straightforward. And these are the major conditions. The policy is for personal cyber risks and does not cover business. So for example, if you're running a little side business of, selling some stuff online, and your online activity connected to your work is hacked, this is not the policy for that. There are specialized policies for that type of coverage. This is really for individuals, for your personal reputation, your personal accounts, and your online accounts. The other thing that we've covered already is that you must back up your data, because we have to have something to work with to get your data back. So we do ask that you have a backup of your important data that you're going to be expecting us to put back into place. And then you must use password best practices. And essentially, one of the main things we mean by that is, please do not leave the default passwords assigned by your router or by any device that you purchase as the password for access to your home. So you need to have password best practices, change the default passwords when you receive or purchase a new device, and ideally using complex password. And with some of the tips that James gave us, some of these password managers can really help with that. So I've mentioned CyberScout a few times. DigitalShield provides coverage, provides access to CyberScout. Since 2003, CyberScout has been a leader in protecting businesses, individuals, and families against hackers, thieves, and human error. CyberScout can help you with cybersecurity education. So if you have any questions, you want to give them a call, protection and resolution services, and they offer swift multilingual incident response services around the world. So they can serve you in a variety of languages. They're available 24/7. And you can call in anytime. It doesn't have to be when you've had a claim. You can consult with their cyber experts on any topic you may need assistance with, whether it's help setting up the router for the safety of your smart home, or something isn't working as we discussed before, or how to safely use your mobile device when traveling, or find a balance between the different services that you're using. They can be there for you. They offer 24/7 service, and as just a summary overview, they offer proactive assistance, incident remediation, identity protection guidance, online protection tips. They help you liaise with third parties if you need to. They can provide forensics and evidentiary support in the event of a claim or if something is going wrong. And they also have claims filing assistance. So when you make a claim, they're going to stick with you from A to Z to make sure that they get that claim to us, that we cover all the bases and take all the steps that we need to do to best protect you when there's an incident. And they can also help with credit report enrollment. So overall, with all of the coverages that we've mentioned and all of the research that we've done in the market, with all of the other products that are currently available, DigitalShield is the most comprehensive personal cyber product in the market. The price point provides the most value. It's definitely priced to be accessible, and we want to make sure that people can have access to it. It's not connected to any other type of insurance policy, so you can purchase this as a standalone policy. You don't have to have your home insured with any certain company. It's not going to use a combination of different policies to cover you for all the things that we spoke of. It is really a standalone product. And it provides the broadest range of coverage available as one product available to individuals today. It provides you with the insurance protection, which can provide financial compensation to you to get you back into the place that you were before a cyber incident occurs. And in addition to monies paid or the replacement of compromised devices, it also provides that additional support, such as psychological, legal, and it can help you with prevention if you want to give them a call and use them as your cyber concierge and just run any ideas by them or ask them if they have any tips for you. They really do provide personalized service and are there to help all of you as a client of DigitalShield. So overall, we're very pleased to be sharing this policy with you after covering some of the risks that we're all facing in our day-to-day lives. We feel that this allows you to enjoy the lifestyle that you want to have, knowing that you have access to top cyber specialists that can keep you and your home and your family secure and act as just helpful consultants if you need to look into something or you just want to feel better set up as you're putting things together in your home and setting up your smart homes or getting ready to travel. So at the beginning of our talk, I opened up with talking about who is DigitalShield for. And now that we've covered everything, I'd just like to kind of do a wrap up. And I think essentially DigitalShield could be for anyone. It could be for adventurers, if you're traveling, if you're using wearables. It can be for people with kids of all ages, either college or school age. It can be for couples or single people as well, if you're using online dating, or if you're worried that someone, there might be someone stalking you. There are just so many different benefits to this type of coverage for different people at different stages of their life who like to do different activities. I've included tech geniuses here because I've definitely heard from people, well, I know everything about computers, or I'm in the field, I don't need this kind of coverage. But at the end of the day, just because you're aware of how to keep yourself safe, the bad actors involved in cyber crimes are very smart and very savvy. And there are a lot of tech geniuses or even tech billionaires who have been hacked. And it's not something that is reserved only for people who don't know anything about how to stay safe online. So I think there's even room there if you're a tech genius. For seniors, especially, seniors are often targeted and they are very much online. I think the stats are over 70% of seniors are online as of data probably about 2 years ago. And then, of course, online shoppers, and who isn't shopping online since COVID? People with investments or bank accounts, definitely could benefit from this coverage. And finally, taxpayers. So that I think that covers pretty much everyone. So finally, I'd just like to go over how to sign up in case you're wondering. So we have created a website, which is very, very easy to sign up on. As mentioned, you just click on the Enroll Now button on the site. And right away, it's going to ask you to create an account to make sure that it keeps all of your information secure. You're just going to enter your name, your email address, and I believe possibly your phone number. That will create your account. And then from there, you're going to have the options to purchase the level of coverage that you want to have with DigitalShield. And it all takes place online. So it's very easy. If for some reason you go in, you create your account, you're not sure, and you leave the process, your account will still be created, and you can go back to the client login screen by pressing the button that you can see on the main page, and log back into your secure account and purchase the product whenever you're ready to buy. So at this time, I would like to open this up to any questions. I'm going to take a look and see what we have here. I know a lot of people have put some questions in here, so thank you guys so much for attending and also for sharing, your questions with us. Let's see what we can see here. So James, I have a question here for you. As I take a look at a few of them. And you had touched on password managers earlier, and someone is asking, can you recommend a password manager or a couple of options?
Sure. So LastPass tends to be a pretty solid one. They have both free and paid offerings, either personal or family. 1Password is another big one that I see around. Even Google Chrome, if you have a Gmail account, Google can act as a password manager. And then a lot of times people will buy home antivirus solutions like McAfee or Symantec. And a lot of times those will come with password managers as well. So it really just depends on how broad you want to get, whether it's free, whether it's just for you, whether you want a little bit more out of it, or you want your family involved as well. And you can get a subscription for that.
Great. Thank you so much, James. Those are definitely some good options, and some of them are really easy to use too, which is really nice. We have another question here, and this one's pretty straightforward. What is the deductible per occurrence? So the deductible is $500 on the policy. And it's a pretty straightforward deductible amount. Another question that we have is, if the policy is used to reimburse out-of-pocket costs and financial losses, or to cover support, guidance, and educational services, particularly when there is no financial loss. So essentially, it can be for both. So for example, in the case of ransomware, where you have to pay a ransom, then there's a financial loss involved there. We will work with you to determine the best approach. And if a ransom has to be paid, the ransom costs would be covered. If there is a situation where someone has stolen funds from your account, again, that's a financial loss. If there's a situation such as cyber stalking or cyberbullying, those don't necessarily have direct financial losses, but the support and the guidance, those things are all included as part of the policy. So I'm not sure if that answers the question entirely, but I hope that helps. If not, please feel free to put a follow-up and we'll do our best to answer it. We're running short on time here, so thank you all so much for all the questions. I am going to answer one more because I think this is a big question. Does NFP offer access to security programs like Norton Antivirus, VPNs, etc.? So that's a great question. One of the things that have been really common on the market is these types of services. So very often when people offer cybersecurity, they don't offer the insurance part of the package, and they offer this part of the package, which is, antivirus tools and VPNs and this sort of thing. That is not the focus of this policy. So this policy is really focused on the proactive support. It's focused on the financial losses that you may incur. But it does not provide you with an antivirus or anything like that. However, if you call CyberScout and ask them for tips and advice on how you can set yourself up and what to do, they'll be able to really walk you through that at a high level and maybe make recommendations depending on your situation, because everyone's situation is individual. So I think that it's really worth making that call when you have your policy and accessing those services to help guide you as to what the best choices are. But we do not cover the cost of antivirus in the policy. I'll answer one more. Thank you all so much for all the questions, because this is something that has come up. Many people use the same computer for work and personal use. What happens in a case like that? So that does sound like a complicated situation, because obviously you're accessing your work computer and your home computer. Your company would be responsible for any company-related breaches that are happening on your work situation, if I can put it that way. And this policy responds to your personal risks and the impact of your personal use of the computer. So in a situation like that, most companies do have some kind of something in place. But for your personal use of your computer, one thing that I definitely recommend, and I did this myself, and especially with COVID, a lot of people are using their home computers at work, and there's a lot of crossover here. I contacted my cyber concierge over at CyberScout, and I told them what I was doing with my home computer and my work computer, and also with my cell phone, that I was doing, I've got access to my work stuff on my cell phone, what can I do? And they had some really good tips on how to separate the two, or keep things secure on the personal side, because that's going to be really important, especially if your a personal activity that you're doing impacts your company. So it's a complex question. I think that it's definitely worth looking at, and the policy does provide some guidance if you call in and tell them about your situation, and they'll be able to help you figure out the best way to protect yourself in that situation. I hope that helps.
All right, Mila, is there anything else you want to cover before we close out today? I know we're a little over time.
Yeah, we definitely are. Thank you all so much for joining. And no, I think that covers about everything. If we missed any questions, then we could definitely put them in our Q&A, which will be available on the website, I'm sure, in our frequently asked questions, and also with this recording.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mila and James, for sharing your valuable time and your expertise with us today. To reiterate, we recorded today's presentation, and the recording will be available within 2 business days. Finally, at this time, I'd like to take a moment to ask you to all to take a short survey. The survey will populate in a new window when you exit out of Zoom. Please take the moment to complete the survey, as it lets us know what topics are important to our listeners and helps us to make our education program as current and relevant as possible. That concludes our webinar for today. Thank you all so much for joining us, and have a great day.